Hey everyone, I'm Rich. So I'm not sure if you're ready for this, but I believe the best feature of the new M3 MacBook Air is a huge discount that's being applied on the M2 and the M1 MacBook Air that's going on right now. For example, the M1 MacBook Air is going for as low as $699 US here. I saw this at my local Walmart, which is pretty unprecedented. I never saw a MacBook go as low as that. So if you did manage to pick one up, I'd say you got in at a pretty good time. Anyways, we have here both the original base model M1 MacBook Air with 8GB of RAM and a 256GB SSD in all of its glory, right up against a souped up M3 MacBook Air with 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of SSD storage. Now you might remember the huge criticism against the base model M2 MacBook Air, which was the storage speed. Apple sneakily decided to use a single 256GB NAND chip instead of two 128s, and that meant the SSDs on the M2 were much slower. It seems like the tech community called Apple out and they listened, as they went back for the dual NANDs on the M3 instead. But the goal today is to see if the base model M1 still has what it takes to power through tasks and find out if the newer M3 is worth the jump. And just to save you some time right now, it's not that substantial. So first off, I used the Blackmagic design disk reading test, and the M3 Air seemed to come up quite a bit faster when reading and writing H.265 footage. Both 1080p and 4K are what I paid the most attention to specifically, as those are the clips I use most often. But in real world usage, I transferred over a single 15 gig file onto the Mac using a USB hub reader and a SanDisk memory card. And both copied over around the 2 minutes and 50 seconds mark. So I was surprised to see that both literally finished around the same time. So for read and write speeds, I found them pretty much to be the same, and for the average person, I don't think they'll notice a difference. The biggest difference between the M1 and the M2/3 Air is the M1 takes inspiration from a wedge-shaped design, so pretty much down towards the front of the laptop, the Mac gets slimmer while the back is thicker. And in my opinion, I prefer this design a lot, much more so than the all-flat uniform design on the M3. The M1 to me looks curvier, and some of us like that. It's also nice as my hand rests easier and types at a slight incline, which is comfortable. It does feel pretty sharp on the sides though, sometimes, I will admit. Also, the display is a little bit skinnier on the M1. I feel like it wins here, and to me, it does still scream ultra premium. Overall, it looks and feels thinner, but it's not over yet since the M3 has a slightly more uniform build. I do feel like the corners and sides feel much softer to my hands while handling this. I don't think it's nearly as jarring on my palms and fingers. Opening the laptop with one finger here feels more confident, as the M1 sometimes lifts or slides back. The back looks cleaner than the M1 with larger feet studs that comfortably raise the Air higher and just 4 screws, much fewer than the other. You'll also see a slightly thinner bezel on the M3 and a camera notch. Both the M1 and M3 Air's hinges are very strong. I may regard them as being probably the most sturdy displays on laptops I reviewed yet. They pretty much never wobble, and I find them so convenient, especially if I were to be using them on my lap with a couch or a chair. They're just very rigid due to the hinge being almost a full length of the entire laptop. You'll notice that the speakers on the M3 sit right in front of the hinge and bounce off the bottom of the display. They're rocking with 2 tweeters and 2 woofers. Long story short, I noticeably liked the sound coming from the M3 more. It felt much more clear, packed more bass. The volumes didn't crack or tin at max volumes, and since they're not on the sides, facing upwards where the keyboard is on the M1, it makes for a much cleaner and hidden look. Anyways, here's a quick sound comparison between the two. After using the M3 MacBook Air for a while now, I can't unsee the speaker grills. Going back to the M1, they look a little bit bothersome. So upon first glance, the M1 does look slightly outdated. It's still really premium, don't get me wrong, but the M3 does edge out here, and it just looks better. Both laptops have 2 Thunderbolt/USB 4 ports with support for up to 65 watts of charging, even though they include a 35 watt charger brick in the box. I found these to charge right around the 47 watt area. I've tested this using my Sharky portable power bank here that can supply up to 100 watts of PD fast charging. The biggest difference here is that with the M3, you can connect and use up to 2 displays simultaneously when you close the lid of your MacBook Air, and this is useful for work professionals or creatives who may benefit from using 2 monitors. Now I think this is a feature that should have been done a long time ago, but we all know Apple is very stringent on their features. Anyways, if you are someone that does benefit from using 2 monitors, let me know down in the comments below. The M3 Air is packing a 1080p webcam, which does look noticeably sharper than the M1. I think for FaceTime calls and work meetings, you'll notice a difference here as the M3 looks a lot less grainy and softer on the lighting throughout. The M1 does look a little bit lacking, I won't lie, but it still isn't a major deal breaker for me anyhow, as I believe most people on the other end of video calls won't see the difference. Alright, so let's talk about the performance and the updates. We all know that Apple Silicon is a major success for the company. Apple Silicon longevity is unknowable, but it is very cool to be in this moment. I believe that they will support the chip much longer than any of the past models before, so I'm uncertain on how many software updates we will see, but I am confident that we'll be provided with many security updates. Just seeing how we're currently on the latest release of macOS Sonoma, the MacBook Air from 2018 still received the update, and that's 6 years now. When navigating across the UI, opening and closing out of apps, or streaming videos to name a few examples, the M1 honestly feels fast at a glance. I had no major slowdowns or hiccups while using this. As you can see here on screen, I'm basically just flying through the tabs, and when you put this up against the M3 Air, it's just not that much of a difference. The tabs open just a hair quicker like Safari or Photo Booth, but I do want to talk about the RAM though, because the RAM needs for operating systems and applications never really drop in the future. They only go up as more applications and other various tasks are added. So even if you think 8 gigabytes is enough today, you have to ask the question, will it be enough in 2 years, 3, 4, or later? I'm still baffled on how Apple is still able to sell consumers base model MacBooks with only 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigs of storage today for well over $1,000. I think that's just criminal, okay? So I'd recommend anyone out there that's looking for getting a new MacBook, please go with the 16 gig version. Through synthetic benchmarks, I ran Geekbench and got a single core score of around 2,300 and 8,300 for all the cores combined. Compare this to the M3 with around 3,000 for single core and close to 12,000 for multi, so this does seem like a pretty good jump on paper. And those numbers are cool and all, but you didn't think I left out gaming, did you? Well, I already made a whole video of me gaming on the M3 MacBook Air. I ran titles like Minecraft, Baldur's Gate, and even GTA 5. You can watch this video right over here. I think it's really interesting. So I had a lot of fun with that. But I booted up War Thunder and got into a tank session on both laptops, on both high settings, on both maximum resolution, these same settings throughout. And with the M3 MacBook Air, I was able to get an average around 41 to 45 frames per second, and on the M1 around 35 to 40 frames, so the difference was there, I felt it. The tank session on War Thunder is a little bit more intense on the CPU and GPU, as I think there's just more detail for the grass, the tanks, and everything around you see, as compared to something like playing the planes. Still though, I don't think the differences for me were a deal breaker. If anything, I was actually more impressed on how the M1 was still able to play games. So I think the main takeaway here is that you can expect between 5 to 10 more frames difference on the M3 compared to the M1, which is really good. I mean, I hope the M3 Air does that, as Apple advertises that it's around 60% faster than the M1 chip. But you still gotta love Apple Silicon, as they're very energy efficient and don't need a spinning fan, as they are passively cooled. Both machines are virtually silent and do peak around the 102 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit mark, which is still a bit toasty. For a long extended use of gaming, I would err on the side of caution. I'd say after 40 minutes on gaming on both, my hands did get a little bit warm to the touch where the keyboard base was. But at the end of the day, right, Apple never makes it easy for us. I was a little bit skeptical about making a whole video review of the M3 Air by itself, so that's why I integrated it with the M1 to see, how far we're coming here. And in my opinion, I don't think it's a major jump. The base model M1 Air that was released back in 2020 just seems like a better deal in my opinion, as it's very capable of accomplishing what most people need it for today. If you can find a decent deal on the M1 Air, I'd rather buy that and find some extra accessories like an upgraded charger, or use that money towards something else. I'm confident that we'll be seeing this MacBook around for a long time. On the other hand, if you're someone who would like to have the peace of mind, the M3 objectively is the better choice, as you'll get the latest of what today's hardware can give you. The 4 years that the M3 MacBook Air didn't have to go through may be the potential 4 years of updates you could miss out on going with the M1. It's a hard decision, but if you want to take it from me, I'll still be using the M1 till this day, and as long as I can. I hope you like my honest take. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Are you looking at getting the M3, the M2, or the M1 MacBook? Let me know what you are with. if you're looking to upgrade or do anything like that, I want to hear it all. So go down in the comments, get talking. Until then, that's all I have for today's video, guys, and I'll see ya next time.